Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, I hope some other people come.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, it's still 8. Yeah, it's 58.
Maybe we should send. Okay. Well, sorry. I think I'm sharing my screen, but I didn't want to share that. Okay. Okay, we'll just wait a little while until at least David gets here. Oh. Okay, we'll still wait another couple minutes. Does anyone have announcements, or interesting conference or workshop deadlines? Any announcements, good news about papers or anything like that?
Oh, I remember I had to talk about legislation of EMLP.
Oh,
So I think it's
registration at
already,
MNO.
yeah, EMLP. The legislation already started, I think. And yeah, I had to ask like which source should I use. But
Um,
yeah.
okay, can you send me email about that?
Okay.
Okay. But also ask Ed and
Okay.
you send email to me and Ed.
Okay. I will.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I think I can use LTI conference funding
Mhm.
because like registration is only $50, I think.
Wow. Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, it's fine. Just send email to us and
Okay.
one of
I
us
will.
will pay for it. We'll give you a charge stream.
Mhm.
Um, okay. Any other announcements or general issues to discuss? Upcoming deadlines, new workshops. Um, okay, should I just get started then? Um, don't see anybody really responding. Hi. So, okay, so I'm going to make a presentation about something called full construction annotation, which is just in early stages, but there was a workshop about it a couple days ago, and there were people representing different languages, and I'm just going to summarize what that meeting was about and what's going to happen next. So some of you might not know what construction grammar or constructions are. And so this slide has a lot of examples of types of constructions. So constructions can be morphemes, words, multi-word expressions, phrases, or sentences. So they can be at any level. A construction, it has a form and a meaning. Some constructions, when you put together the pieces into a bigger, you put together small pieces of form into a bigger piece of form, they have a predictable meaning. Like if you put together the and student, you get something with a pretty predictable meaning. Student by itself is a type of thing, but the student is an anchored referential instance of a student. So that's an example of a construction that has a predictable meaning. But the idiom out in left field, if you don't know baseball, and in particular, if you don't know this kind of metaphorical idiom, you can't predict what left field is, and you can't predict what it means to be out in left field. Okay, so that's about semantic compositionality. Is the meaning predictable? But there's also an issue of productivity. So putting together the and student is a highly productive process. You can put together any determiner and any noun, and that's called productivity. So I could say the student, I could take a different determiner, a student, I could take a different noun, a desk. It's very highly productive. But something that's not quite productive is going to prison, to school, to bed, and then, but not to airport or to bath. So you have to say, I'm going to the airport. So this construction of using a preposition for a destination, like to prison, she's going to prison, she's going to school, with a noun phrase that doesn't have a determiner. So to prison, not to the prison. That's not a completely productive construction. And then UK and US English differ on to hospital or to the hospital. I know we differ on in hospital or in the hospital. So that's the issue of productivity. Does the construction apply to all the words that have the right parts of speech? And then there's an issue of core versus non-core syntax. So putting together a determiner and a noun is part of core syntax. And putting together a subject and a verb, like the student yawned, is also part of core syntax. Putting together a verb and an object, like write the book, that's also part of core syntax. But in the bottom right of the screen, actually the bottom left and the bottom right, there are a lot of examples of constructions that are not core syntax. Not just putting together a head with one of its dependents. or there's something funny about the syntax. So for example, in "it was too big to fail," what's interesting about that is you can say it was too big. So you don't have to say to fail, but you can't say it was big to fail. If to fail is there, to also has to be there. And this is a kind of a strange syntax because normally independency grammar, big would be the head, and to would be a modifier, and fail would be also a dependent of big. Normally, in a dependency syntax, the head, that would be big in this case, is the word that determines what else has to be in the phrase. But in this case, it's the dependent to that allows fail to be there. So this is a discrepancy between what we would call headedness and licensing. So we would say big is the head, but to is the word that licenses to fail. TOO is the word that licenses to fail. So a sort of strange syntax and not core syntax. So to understand what this workshop was about, you have to understand turtles all the way down. And there's a short version of turtles all the way down here, but there's a joke that people tell different ways and somewhat offensively. The joke usually involves a young man who knows science and an old woman who doesn't know science. And the young man gives a talk on astronomy or something. And the old woman at the end listens to the whole talk. And then she comes up to the young man at the end and she says, "You can't fool me. The Earth isn't spinning through space. It's resting on the back of a turtle." And so the young man just decides he's going to apply logic. And so he says, "Well, then what's that turtle resting on?" And the old woman says, "It's resting on another turtle." And the young man says, "Well, then what's that turtle resting on?" And she says, "You can't fool me, young man. It's turtles all the way down." Okay, so that's turtles all the way down. And that's a motto of construction grammar, except it's constructions all the way down. Each construction is made of constructions, which are made of constructions all the way down. However, although construction grammar has become so popular that there are many different kinds of it, there's radical construction grammar, sign-based construction grammar, all kinds of construction grammars. If you look at what people write about, almost nobody is doing constructions all the way down. So, for example, a lot of Fillmore was the founder of construction grammar. A lot of his most popular papers are about specific constructions that are not productive or not compositional. So he has a paper about let alone. I haven't eaten breakfast, let alone lunch. So notice that only works one way. You can't say I haven't eaten lunch, let alone breakfast. So breakfast and lunch are in some kind of ordered relationship with each other, where if you have eaten lunch, if you don't eat breakfast, then it's likely that you haven't, I'm not going to say it right, but you get the idea. There's a long journal article about the specific meaning of this construction. Another one is, what's this fly doing in my soup? Or what are you doing going to the movies when you have a thesis to write? And that's what's X doing? Ying is expressing incongruity. So a fly shouldn't be in my soup. You shouldn't be going to a movie when you're writing a thesis. So that's what is X doing? Y. There's another long journal article about that. Journal articles about comparative structures. But it's interesting that Fillmore didn't write any, although he said constructions all the way down, he didn't write any papers on constructions all the way down. But that's partly because he got cancer and died. He was old, he was in his 80s, but it's still very sad. So another type of approach that I did with a graduate student who graduated a few years ago was called surface construction labeling. And we said, well, we want to look at about 200 constructions that express causality. Like if you say too big to fail, it's being, or let's say so big that it fell over. Being big is what caused it to fall over. Or after I drank water, I felt better. So drinking water made me feel better. So we had about 200 constructions, but we couldn't, it was beyond the scope of Jesse Dunitz's thesis to do constructions all the way down. So he said, you know, let's just start with dependency parser. And then we're going to recognize our 200 causal constructions in English on top of that. So we called that surface construction. It was just surface because it wasn't all the way down. We knew, you know, we couldn't do it. Other books on construction grammar make general theories of constructions, but don't formulate an entire grammar, building a grammar from the ground up. And so an example of a construction theory book is Bill Croft's book, Radical Construction Grammar. So nobody, well, okay, I do know of one group that has made very small construction all the way down grammar, and they've done it for robots and block worlds. And so they really have to start with entities. It's a semantically based grammar. So you don't start with nouns, you start with entities like blocks. And then you can make referring expressions out of entities by putting determiners on them. And it's constructions all the way down, but just for a simple blocks world. Okay, so a bunch of people shown here decided to do a full construction annotation workshop. But this is starting as it's a follow-up to another workshop they had. And so they said, let's just get a bunch of people and we'll take the first 11 sentences of chapter 2 of The Little Prince in a bunch of different languages, German, English, Japanese, Russian, Swedish, Portuguese. And each team will do a constructions all the way down analysis of these 11 sentences. So here are the sentences. And you can see that there's a lot of normal stuff, but there's, you know, oh, I just realized I didn't put this in slideshow. There's a lot of normal stuff. Then there's also things like negative indefinite pronouns, which not all languages have. There's a comparison. I was as isolated as a castaway on a raft. And there's a distance phrase. Okay, so some of it's pretty normal, subject, verb, object, determiner, noun, and some of it's a little bit special constructions. And I don't know that anybody succeeded in doing constructions all the way down on any of the sentences. So in about a month, we're going to meet again, and we're just going to do the first sentence. Because I don't think anybody really got constructions all the way down on all of them. So there's an annotation interface, which is not great. And this is what a construction analysis looks like. So this one was done by me and Miriam Petruk at ICSE, which is a research institute near Berkeley. So you can see the sentence across the top, and then down the side, you can see a list of construction names, like initial adverbial modifier, subject predicate, verb alone. The verb C and alone CE shouldn't be there. I should have deleted them. Prepositional phrase circumstance, prepositional phrase time, prepositional phrase place, negative head with relative clause. I think I meant an indefinite negative pronoun with relative clause, which could have a slightly non-predictable meaning, but not sure yet. A restrictive relative clause and the use of ago are some of the things we labeled. But this isn't a full construction all the way down analysis. So the rows are the names of the constructions. And if you look in any given row, you'll see in the subject predicate row, the two parts, they're called the construction elements, are subject and predicate. So you can see that in the subject predicate construction, subject and predicate are labeled as two construction elements. And in the, okay, yeah, sorry, some of these labels are wrong because we're having trouble using the annotation tool. So in any case, the rows are construction names, and each construction has construction elements. And so this is what the annotation would look like. So what happened at the workshop? So they had two sessions, but one of them was at a time I couldn't go to. So I heard one session, one other talk aside from ours, and about 1 hour of discussion. And the follow-up session in November is going to be at a better time. In case anyone is interested, it'll be at a time they'll find that sort of sweet spot when all the time zones can be there. One of the biggest takeaways that I got from the part that I heard is that Brazil has a really impressive constructions all the way down project. But even though they've been doing constructions all the way down for a long time, the leader of the Brazil project, Thiago, said that they have been theory driven. When you're thinking all the way down, you're starting from a theory at the top. But he found this task challenged his theory because he had to start with sentences and start at the bottom and build constructions all the way up. And he actually found it challenging to his theory. The other thing I found out about the Brazilian project is that constructions would be in hierarchies. So for example, determiner noun and subject predicate could both be in the specifier head construction, because sometimes determiners and subjects are called specifiers of phrases. And so you have an inheritance hierarchy of constructions. So, so then, well, all this was going on. I know this is being recorded and I don't want it to get back to the people in Dusseldorf. We had a really hard time using their tool. Well, I mean, in fact, that's what most of our presentation was about. We did it in a very constructive way. We told them what we had trouble with. But I also discovered that everything I could do with their annotation tool, I could do faster in Excel. So this is the same sort of annotation, except now the words are vertical, and now each column is the name of a construction. So this is just sideways from the way they did it in their annotation tool, but I found that this was much faster and I could do everything that I could do in their annotations tool. But what I did here is I also added a universal dependency parse. So the index of the word, maybe that should be word 0 instead of word 1. Maybe didn't do it quite right. What word, for each word, what is this word a dependent of? So on is a dependent of, ooh, I got that, oh. I got that wrong. On is a dependent of 6. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, I got the numbers wrong. The is a dependent of 6. No, hang on. I really don't know what I did. I'm not sure what I did with the numbering there. Okay, on depends on night, the depends on night, first depends on night. And the head verb of the whole thing is fell asleep, is fell, and so on. And so what I did in the columns is I did a construction analysis. So I said, in English, an ordinal noun phrase has an ordinal word in it, an ordinal number, but it also starts with a determiner. Usually the word the. And then it has the ordinal, and then it has the rest of the NP. So what I'm saying here is that there's a construction called ordinal NP, and it has 3 construction elements. And then if I had lined this up correctly, you could see how those construction elements correspond to the universal dependency labels. Now, if you look at Chinese, and I got this from the grammar formalisms class last spring, and the Chinese tree banking was done by Shan Zhang. So you can see that Chinese also has an ordinal noun phrase construction, but it doesn't start with a determiner. It only has 2 construction elements, the ordinal and the noun phrase. And you can see that in the English location on top construction, there's just an adposition and a noun phrase. And in the Chinese location on top construction, there's a kind of circumposition, I think, and with a noun phrase in the middle. So the location on top construction is a little bit different. And I think that if whoever translated The Little Prince into Chinese didn't say 1,000 miles from any habitation, so we don't have a distance noun phrase. But I think the distance noun phrase construction is also different in Chinese. But this is a way, if you want to compare across languages, you can compare the columns, and then you can see how they correspond to different dependency parses. So that's what I'm kind of doing on the side while I continue working with this group of people. And I think that's actually all I wanted to say. So any questions about that? We're going to continue. So as I said, there's going to be another workshop in about a month, and we're doing the first sentence, which is, so I lived alone without anyone I could really talk to until a crash in the Sahara Desert.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you think of a sentence where there is one word that doesn't belong to any construction in that sentence, or is that impossible?
I think every word is, think about it in, any syntactic framework that you like. If it was HPSG, every word would have to be added by a rule, like the head specifier rule, the head complement rule, the conjunction rule. So if you think about it as merge operations, every word would have to be kind of added by some legitimate merge operation.
Right. I was also thinking that beyond the word level, that I was, well, it's just a thought I had.
So, sorry.
No, David, go ahead.
So I was wondering about the Brazilian version of construction grammar that you'd mentioned. that is hierarchical. So is it like sign-based HPSG, or what? You know, because where you have constructions at various nodes in the tree or in the feature structure.
Yeah, they've obviously borrowed a lot of things from HPSG, but maybe we should, since Brazil's in a similar time zone to us, maybe we should, like it goes back and forth between being the same as us or 2 hours off from us. So maybe we could ask somebody to visit us and talk about their project.
I think that would be cool.
Because it did seem like they borrowed a lot from HPSG. That's head-driven tree structure grammar for people that don't know. So that there's an inheritance hierarchy of constructions. And it looks like they also tried to connect to universal dependencies. Does anyone have any opinions? When I looked at the different languages, I'm going to ask about negative indefinite pronouns, or negative, or just indefinite pronouns, or negative polarity indefinite pronouns. I wrote a Google Doc about that because I was trying to figure it out. Okay, so I think in Chinese, whoever translated The Little Prince into Chinese says, not exist one person I can really talk to. So there's not a pronoun like no one. So English says without, well, English translations vary. With no one I could really talk to, or without anyone I could really talk to. So you either get with and then a negative indefinite pronoun, which not every language has, or you get without, which is a negative polarity trigger, and then you get the negative polarity indefinite pronoun anyone. But it seems to me that there's like nobody to talk to, nobody to dance with, that there's some kind of special, slightly unpredictable meaning, a kind of inability or ability meaning. Does anyone get a kind of construction-y feeling about that? If you do, you can let me know. Just thought I'd ask, because that's the sentence that we're going to discuss in detail in about a month.
Could you elaborate?
Sorry.
Sorry, could you elaborate what you mean by a sense of inability? So if you had nobody to talk to, what is who's unable to do what?
Let me see if I can find a Google Doc that I started. Just hang on. Oh, anyone with the link. Okay, anyone with the link can edit, copy link. Okay, good. Now I'm going to put it in the chat. So I started writing ideas about that in the Google Doc that I just sent a link to. So we don't need to talk about it now, but if you want to, oh yeah, now I'm scrolling through it now. Yeah, I was able to make Google Translate do pretty badly in Chinese and Japanese with this construction, which is one of the things that if you're able to get Google Translate to mess up, it probably means there's something not literal that doesn't really translate. So anyway, in case, I don't know, the syntax geeks here might want to look at that Google Doc that I just sent a link to, where I was trying to work out what's going on with the indefinite pronoun and the modal in that sentence.
Can I, sorry,
Yeah,
can I just pitch in something real quick?
Mhm.
I think in Mandarin, when you say there doesn't exist, no exists person, blah, 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 you can, excuse me, that person can be a subject, but I don't think that can be an object, which is pretty interesting. I guess that's because it's a kind of like a relative clause, but.
Wait, can you say what you're thinking of, like in Chinese to me?
So when you say nobody called me, you can say 没有人打电话给我. That means no exist person called me. But there was nobody I could talk to, or there was nobody to talk to. I don't think you can say.
Or I had.
One.
How about I had nobody to talk to.
You can't just put. You can't just say something like 没有人我可以聊没有人 okay, well, talk to is kind of a reciprocal verb which messes things up. There were no places to visit, let's say. There were no places to visit in, I don't know, New York. 纽约没有地方我们可以去. It's actually okay.
Yeah, I thought that sounds okay to me.
How about I thought.
Yeah, but it's worse than when it's a subject. That's what I think.
Yeah, hang on a second.
But I think in Japanese, when you Japanese is like Chinese in that it doesn't have indefinite negative polarity, indefinite pronouns. But the negative polarity triggers the particle on whatever you're negating. So like you would say 誰も for nobody, where 誰 is just who. And mo is the negative polarity particle, right? So you can say nobody called me. 誰も僕に電話をかけてくれなかった. Where 誰 is a subject, and I can say I didn't call anyone. 私は誰にも電話をかけなかった. So that would work both ways. So I guess it's just with Chinese where there was nobody I could talk to, that there was nobody, blah, that construction is a relative clause or something similar. It's just more elaborate, I guess.
Yeah, so for the November meeting, we're allowed to work on more than one language. So if you want to just work with me on that sentence in Japanese and Chinese, that would be great.
Okay.
And David, if you want to throw in Hmong, that would be fine too. If you can find the Little Prince in Hmong.
I don't think I can find Little Prince in Hmong, actually. But
I have a question. Namely, aside from the interface that you were originally using, what were like the specific difficulties with doing constructions all the way down? Like, did people not finish because they didn't have time, or because it's more difficult than initially seemed?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because every time you think of a few constructions and then you realize it's getting messy and then you want to rewrite it cleaner, you keep wanting to rewrite. It's hard to reach a stopping point.
And kind of a follow-up to that question, how would you know once you have reached all the way down?
Oh, how would you know when you've gotten all the way down? I mean, you can get all the way down, but then all the way down, you'd have to have a theory of what that means. So cognitive grammar people do construction grammar, and syntactic theory people also do construction grammar. So the cognitive people would get down to grounded experience. So David, you're from Berkeley. So that would get down to...
I'm not one of those people from Berkeley.
But you would get down to just individuated things in the world, like cell phones, and agent acting on patient, and turning a type of thing like cell phone into a specific referring expression. So, and then all the way down for a syntactician would be down to, you know, the definitions of parts of speech. So actually for different types of construction grammarian, see, that's how great construction grammar is, that cognitive linguists and generative linguists will all do it, even though they won't ever talk to each other in the same room. But yeah, all the way down means something different depending on what kind of linguist you are. Yeah, so embodied construction grammar just has to get down to like, what do your hands do? You know, something very neurologically experiential about your body that helps you make sense of the world. So what do we have for next week?
I'm on next week,
Okay.
and I haven't decided. So if there are any requests, ask those. Or if anyone else wants to go. Got a very busy week coming up. But yeah, I'm up for next week.
Okay. Okay. Anything else we should talk about this week? I guess not. Okay. Is it okay to end early?
It's okay with me.
Okay.
I gotta go anyway.
Okay, good. Okay, so thanks everybody. That's it for this week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next week.
You